Long before Mario had staked land at Universal's theme parks, Sega's Sonic the Hedgehog made his way to Epcot. This is the history of Sega's stint at Epcot. It's 1994. Sega's current and most popular console, the Genesis, was reaching the end of its lifespan. In Japan, its successor, the Saturn, had already come out, while American audiences had to wait till '95 for the Saturn to come out. Not that anyone was going to buy it though. Sega of America was in a deep war with Nintendo for market share, making huge ground from their first console, the Master System, which hardly made an impact, to the Genesis, which launched a flop but was turned into a worthy contender to dethrone Nintendo. While a lot of Sega's plan to take on Nintendo was making great software that showcases the features of the Genesis, the biggest battle for the companies was through advertising. Sega launched ad campaigns that directly attacked Nintendo.
16-bit arcade hits. What Nintendo don't.
They slowly made Nintendo into a kids' gaming console, while their Genesis was the cooler, older gamers' console. They positioned themselves as cooler, better, and faster. They held star-studded events across the nation, toured the country showing off their games, and even took over the advertising in Walmart's hometown to convince Walmart to sell their console when Nintendo was forcing retailers to only sell their consoles. All this to say, Sega had become a big deal, growing into a pop culture institution that was going toe-to-toe with Nintendo. Also having its moment was Disney, which was having such a successful run that it's now referred to as the Disney Decade. New parks, new rides, new movies, and more mark this as one of the most popular times for Disney. With Sega and Disney being at their primes at the same time, it would only make sense that there would be a collaboration. Of course, there were Disney games on the Genesis, most notably Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, but that was just the start. In 1994, Sega and Disney collaborated, putting their minds together to create an arcade at Epcot. Wow. Really pushing the bar with that one, weren't they? While I can see why this is what Disney and Sega decided to make, it's an easy indoor attraction that isn't costly to upkeep, and it gets Sega games into the hands of people from all over the world, but it just seems so boring. Epcot is an interesting choice for the Sega arcade though. If you aren't familiar with Epcot or what Epcot was supposed to be, here's a quick history of Epcot. Renowned cartoonist, theme park owner, and totally great employer, Walt Disney wanted to build a second theme park out where there was copious cheap land and less unions. He settled on Kissimmee, Florida, and envisioned his Disney World. While working on the project, he also thought up his magnum opus, an experimental prototype Community of Tomorrow, or Epcot for short. Walt's Epcot would be a utopia, walkable urban design with mass transit, public amenities, and more. But he died, so they made it a theme park where you can drink around a man-made lake. No one at Disney post-Walt's passing was crazy enough to take on building a city, and I can't blame them for that. Instead of being the city of tomorrow, Epcot would go on to showcase cultures from around the world, while also showcasing the technology of tomorrow. Epcot opened to the public on October 1st, 1982. From Utopia to Sega Arcade. That's forever the legacy of Epcot. Anyway, there was a certain sect of Epcot that Sega's exhibit would be located in, an attraction called Innoventions, a place where Disney wanted to showcase technological advancements and their practical applications in everyday life. So you know, Mr. Bones on Sega Saturn. Innoventions had two sections, Innovations East and Innovations West. Over the years, different exhibits would rotate in and out of these two sections. Innoventions East held exhibits such as an Apple computer exhibit, Don't Waste It, presented by Waste Management, and Fantastic Plastic Works, sponsored by the Society of the Plastics Industry. While those exhibits sound weird, they do show the future of home technology. Innoventions West housed AT&T, 1994 to 1999, Aladdin's Magic Carpet VR adventure from 1996 to 1997, which actually seemed pretty cool, Lego Dacta from 1994 to 1995, and ultimately the Sega exhibit.
Visitors at the Innoventions Sega display are really going to see the future from Sega.
Starting in 1994 with the launch of Innoventions, Sega had a 10,000 square foot space, which included 150 Sega Genesises, or Sega Genesi, whatever, Sega CDs, and Sega Game Gear titles. Eventually, Sega 32X and Sega Saturn games were also added. The exhibit was divided into 5 sections.
You walk into the exhibit right into the future area where we'll be showing the very latest games and the very latest technologies. Across the aisle is the arcade area, and then there's also an action-adventure area, as well as a kids area where everything is at a smaller scale, really for 4- and 5-year-olds, to try and get the Sega experience.
There is also a sports section not mentioned in the interview.
Innoventions is a wonderful opportunity to step into the future And it's a great opportunity for Sega to show how we intend to shape the future of interactive entertainment.
Some of the games featured for the Genesis were The Lion King, Aladdin, Vector Man 2, X-Women the Sinister Virus, and Sonic the Hedgehog 2. For the Saturn, there was Mr. Bones, Nights into Dreams, the Sega Netlink modem, and more. The designs for Sega's area were handled by Van Sickle and Roleri, who were also responsible for Sega's E3 1996, 97, and 98 designs, as well as Sega City Irvine. They still had the designs for the Sega exhibit on their web portfolio, interestingly enough. While Sega offered a number of arcade games, the cabinets were coin-operated, despite disgruntled customers having already paid a fee to get into a park. The coins weren't quarters though. They were special coins with Sonic on them. On October 15, 1997, Sega's area of Innoventions was closed for refurbishment. Sega's area of Innoventions was moved and reopened on January 15, 1998, with Sega's previous space going to IBM. This version of Sega's booth was reduced and lasted 18 months, with it closing on July 15, 1999 for a second refurbishment.
One of the sector's big players is Sega Dreamcast. Mike shows us how it is hoping to blunt the heavily promoted launch this fall of Sony's PlayStation 2.
With the launch of the Sega Dreamcast, Sega returned with a new area on September 30th, 1999, focusing solely on their new console. It's speculated that the design originated from E3 1999. With the new title, Video Games of Tomorrow, Sega initially offered 34 Dreamcast games to play, including titles not yet released. They replaced the arcade cabinets of the previous exhibit as well. Later, a portion of this exhibit was devoted to online play via the Sega.net service. Some of the Dreamcast games featured were Flag to Flag, NBA 2K, NFL 2K, Samba de Amigo, Sega Bass Fishing, Sega Rally 2, Sonic Adventure, and Trick Style. I just love the idea that someone's going to bring their kid to Disney World, bring them to Epcot, and then have their kid play NBA 2K. Like, hey son, wanna go ride Test Track? No dad, I gotta get this dub, hold on. Sega pulled out of Innoventions in January 2001. Their space was then taken by Disney Interactive, who retained the Video Games of Tomorrow name. It's thought that after Sega's departure from Innoventions, its 8-player Daytona USA cabinet was moved to Disney Quest in downtown Disney. The Disney Interactive booth would go on to showcase games developed and published by Disney, with it most notably being used for Kingdom Hearts and Disney Infinity. Innoventions West, which held the Sega exhibit, would close down on May 19, 2015, about 14 years after the Sega exhibit closed. Innoventions West would be torn down and replaced by Journey of Water, which opened at the end of 2023. Innoventions East would close down on September 7, 2019. Innoventions East would have its building remain, but Innoventions Inside would be replaced with the Connections Eatery in 2022. Since 2001, there hasn't been any more collaboration between Disney and Sega in the parks, with Sega losing most of its pop culture relevance when Sega dropped out of the console market. There are a few remnants of Sega left in the park though, while not accessible to the public. In the tunnels below Epcot, there's a few relics of the Sega exhibit. There's a Sega Sports sign, a design image of the exhibit, and a drawing of Sonic. These were found by @SonicToyHunter and his wife who works at Disney. The only Sega-related thing accessible to the public is in the store in Japan that sells Sonic plushes, among other things. As someone who used to live in Orlando and work at Disney World, it was really cool to see the old Sega exhibit, and I wish I could have seen it in person. Let me know in the comments below if you had a chance to see this in person. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe for more about video game history.